Hi there, it's Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Dan, and we're going to be talking about his new book, The Culture Advantage, Empowering Your People to Drive Innovation. And it's a fantastic book. If you want to set up a culture of innovation or start doing that or evolve your culture of innovation, it's a really good read. And it's got loads of advice in that. Just thought I'd get that out of the way, Dan. I'll do the advert for you.
Thanks, Tim.
And Dan, tell people where they can get hold of you.
Sure. So two main channels. First, danielstrode.com, my website. I've got a small little blog there with daily views and things on my mind. And then also LinkedIn, Dan Strode on LinkedIn. I'm quite responsive there, and that's probably the best place to send me a message.
It's certainly. I think I found you on LinkedIn. I was looking for interesting people, and then we found out we'd got the same publisher.
Yeah, we have, and I'm happy to see your second edition's just come out as well. So
It has, yes.
hopefully everyone's happy.
So just give us a quick overview in terms of your experience. How did you get to the position where you're talking about innovation, and because you work for quite a large bank, don't you?
Yeah, so I'm probably not a unique but a curious individual in the sense that I'm part practitioner. So I'm head of the strategy and culture of Banco Santander globally. I'm part professor or academic because I teach at various business schools around the world. And now I'm part author as well because I want to share some of that learning and insight. But I've been on a culture journey for the last 5 or 6 years, really going deep into what is corporate culture, how to make companies tick through corporate culture. And that led me to the book. I noticed companies going bust left, right, and center, going out of business faster than ever before, all because they didn't have cultures of innovation. And I said, well, what can we do to try to push that agenda forwards? And out came the book.
And it's fascinating when I was reading it, because it's one of the things that I've tried to install into our business is one of innovation, because I just can't believe, well, you've got to keep innovating, otherwise you're falling behind. Because I just sit here in this room here and think, well, everybody else, all our competitors are trying to innovate, therefore I've got to do that as well. It's so critical today.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a fantastic statistic that I saw the other day, which is the S&P 500, so the 500 largest American firms today. In 5 years' time, 2027, 75% of them, statistically speaking, will not be in that index. And that shows you the pace of change. It's never been so fast, yet it will never be so slow.
So there's an importance of having a culture of innovation. So why do you do that? Why is it so important that we build that within the organization?
It's really important because I think what I observed is it's very easy for companies to fall into the various biases and traps of thinking that their success that they have today is going to keep them going in the future. And the success that they've had today also means that they're geniuses and have all the answers. And when you think like that, and when you fall into those traps, you don't change, you don't take risks, you don't try to innovate. And you need to really train yourself and train the muscles in the organization to think in innovative ways. And you can do that, fortunately, through culture and through doing some routines and rituals every day.
I think it's so critical, isn't it? That I've worked for organizations which started off being very innovative, and then what happened was the machine was basically built to crank a handle to generate the revenue and the profit. And then what happened was that my background is IT, so I worked for a very big on-premise US software company. And then we recruited somebody, and I remember them saying they were from a SaaS vendor, and they said, we were used to working with 18-month sales cycles, and they said, no, our sales cycle is 6 weeks. And it was at that point when the penny dropped, or where we went, oh my God, there's been a massive transformation taking place in the market, and we've missed it. And it must happen to a lot of organizations.
Absolutely. And when you're not looking at what's happening in the market, when you're not speaking to customers and sensing the changes, it's like the story of the boiling frog. The frog that gets boiled in the water slowly doesn't realize. And actually, by that point in time, it's far too late to do anything. So you have to force yourself to take action now, force yourself to change, force yourself to speak to new people, take new opinions and views. Otherwise, it really is too late.
So I know one of the things that you're in the book is that you're very honest about some of the changes that need to take place within organizations. And we all know that change is really hard because it's often resisted. I went through exactly the same when we moved and said that we were going to be a SaaS vendor. The amount of the amount of people that argued against it. And you need to rethink the business in some shape or form. What's your, how do you see that happening, and how do you take on that vested interest in not changing?
Yeah, it's a good question because rethink your business model is my first principle in the book. And the reality is, no one stays in their lane anymore. So if you look at some of the giants of industry like Amazon, that started off as a bookseller and now is doing, well, I don't know what it's not doing,
Yeah.
perhaps is the more accurate description. Look at every single industry, and everyone is trying to do something new, something extra, trying to change their business model. And you have to do that too. And you need to be very brave culturally speaking, because many companies are going along with their cash cow and their existing business and it's working fine. And it takes someone very brave to say, let's try something new at the expense of cannibalizing the existing business. And that's what Netflix has done.
Yeah.
It was a DVD by post company. They cannibalized that and turned it into an online streaming. They cannibalized that and turned it into a movie production studio. And they're going to cannibalize that and do something else in the future, as long as they have that mindset of rethinking their business model. On the converse side is, if you think like Kodak, you invent the first digital camera, but then you don't want to cannibalize your
You
existing
hide it in a
business.
cupboard.
Exactly. Then big problems. So I think having that mindset is really, really important.
And I think one of the things Amazon decided that once they were the number one seller of books, they were going to innovate themselves out of business, and so created the Kindle.
Exactly. That's wonderful, isn't it? I mean, that's a fantastic display of being the best, being the biggest, but then still being brave enough to go and do something else.
Mm. And they've actually gone on. I mean, as you know, they've gone into retail, they've gone into cloud computing, and they've done all kinds of things. And I guess it's having the antenna out there that you spot the changes taking place in the marketplace.
Yeah, you need to have the antenna out there. Some of the best companies are, really doing this on a regular basis. And Lego would be one that I really pinpoint and say, look at what they're doing. They are having customer obsession at the heart of everything they do. They do focus groups relentlessly with customers to know what's happening in the market, what they want, what are their needs. And by the way, they do it with children. And if you can do it with children and understand what their needs are, you can do it with adults for sure. So there's really no excuse.
So, what are the fundamentals that you need to put together to create this culture of creativity and innovation?
I think one of the interesting things for me is, how can you create creativity with constraints? So I've seen many companies, and Nokia would be the famous example, trying to outspend their rivals and innovate by throwing money at the problem. And they were outspending Apple and Samsung by factors of 10 during their peak
If I
years.
remember, and I read this recently, they had the glass phone before Apple did.
Yeah, so suffering the same kind of problem as Kodak, throwing money at the problem, but then not actually being able to lock down the final tangible finished product. And sometimes, what we're seeing now is it's better to go with the MVP and the minimum viable product,
Yeah.
launch it and iterate it in order to gain market share. And if you look to China, who does this, at scale in every single company there, this is their modus operandi. They launch things to the customers, they see what works, and they iterate again and again and again and again. And they do that at such frightening pace that it's, really unbelievable to the Western world. But we need to assume a little bit of that willingness just to put things out there and test.
There's a book, isn't there? It's Sprint, isn't it? The famous startup book, which is about how to build an MVP by not building the MVP. You basically run a 5-day sprint rather than go away for 18 months and come up with an MVP that actually doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the best examples, and you'll like this one, Tim, because I know you fly probably out of Heathrow. I was at
Yes.
Heathrow during the pandemic and I saw a little QR code on the table in the lounge and I scanned it and it said Hangar 51 at the bottom. And it was really interesting because then I said, what's Hangar 51? And I found out that this was, international airline groups accelerator or culture lab, and what they do is do 10-week sprints to create an idea and launch a product, and this was one of the products. They've also done baggage claims and all sorts of different things. But I think sometimes creating creativity through having a constraint, be that less money, more speed and so on, is really vital.
Because the thing about the sprint methodology is that actually it isn't about throwing money. It's about putting the ideas and coming up with some and testing it and working out whether it works or doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a methodology we all have to assume and take on board, and I think that will help us no end.
I'm just saying hello to Rose. I've had Rose. I've talked to Rose on here before, so I'm just saying hi there, and hi to Will as well. So in terms of creating this mode of a mindset, surely there's going to be a requirement to understand things like, or having people that have a growth mindset, because what I saw is people just trying to close the whole thing down and going back to what they knew and what they loved, rather than actually embracing the change and embracing the fact that, I mean, we sit, we'll sit and laugh here about, can you imagine people saying that cloud wouldn't actually, and SaaS wouldn't actually be a thing? It was just a fad. I mean, we just laugh about it now, but back in the day, and it wasn't that long ago, people were saying it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And growth mindset is one of the fundamental pillars of having a culture of innovation. There's two types of people, two types of company: those who have that growth mindset, which is the willingness to try new things, learning from failure, accepting feedback as a gift, and then people who have a fixed mindset, who think no need to change anything if it works today. I don't want to take any risk. I want to protect myself from being blamed for any failure. And as you can see, they're two very, very distinct mindsets. The good news is you can train that within the company. And one of the things you have to do first is create an environment where there's psychological safety.
Yes.
So an environment where people can speak up, where they can participate, where they're not afraid of failure. The question is, how do you do that? And probably three things come to my mind. The first is you need leaders or the owner of the company to lead by example and have courageous conversations, share personal things, make the space feel warm and safe. The second thing is you need to not rush to give answers. So leaders, you don't need all of the answers. Much better if your people give you the answers or your customers give you the answers. They're the ones on the front line. They know. And the third is to make really clear your expectations. So if you want people to innovate and try things, tell them, I want you to innovate and try new things, and you won't be punished. If you don't want that, then tell them, fine, don't make any mistakes and be punished, but be clear. And if you do those things, you'll start to build that psychological safety, which helps the growth mindset.
Yeah, I think psychological safety is so important in organizations. When I started work, the assumption was that the leaders had all the answers, and it generally wasn't the case. And I think it's so important for leaders to say, "Look, I don't know." And I work for a sales VP who used to run these brainstorming sessions, which was really about pulling the answers actually from the people at the customer facing So he'd say, "I don't know. I sit in an office all day. You're the people that have all the answers." And pulling that out and then providing that as a strategy. It was a great way of getting both consensus, but also getting people to innovate on the fly.
Exactly, and it actually has so many benefits. So not only do companies who ask these for find that the employees are more happy and more engaged by 30 to 40%, the company actually takes 60% more risk and 49% more innovation efforts or new ideas come as a result of it. So good for the company, good for the employees. It's a win-win.
So we've had a comment from Will Shorten, who said, "The best way I heard design thinking described is, what is it, what if, what's wows, and what works." Thanks, Will.
Nice summary of design thinking. And I think if the reality is, if we come with that mentality about what is this product, what if we do this, and what will wow our customer, if you always have that at the front of your mind, you're not going to go far wrong. But it's very different from the typical approach to creating products or services, where you would put one team in a lab for 18 months, and then another team would do their bit, and you would be so far detached from the customer, and actually everyone would be doing their own piece in silos, and when you get to the final product, it doesn't quite flow.
So what's the importance of having leadership being involved in this? And you've touched on it already, but what is that critical for the business?
Well, I think culture is everybody's job, yes, but leaders have an outsized role to play. So they have a much more important or influencing role than the rest of the organization, because when you're a leader, people are watching what you do and what you don't do. So when you don't see or when you don't observe behaviors that you want being displayed, then that also sends a signal to the company. So I think leaders must lead by example and be involved in the culture. The culture is their responsibility. It's not the responsibility of human resources. And if you outsource culture to marketing or human resources or communications, watch it fail. You don't understand culture, and it will be doomed to failure. You haven't understood the value that it brings your company, and people will know that you don't believe in it enough to be the sponsor yourself.
Yeah, I think it's so critical that the leaders are the people that set the culture. And I agree with you that people are looking at them all the time, saying, it's a bit like swearing in meetings and stuff like that. If you allow that as a leader to go on, then everybody assumes that that's a natural culture. Whereas if you shut it down, then people actually understand that it's not acceptable. And it's the same with all behaviors. That you're in effect defining what is right and what is wrong, what is good behavior and what is bad behavior.
Absolutely. And it's exactly what you say. It's those micro things every single day that if you continually stack them on top of each other, suddenly your culture starts to shift in a really, really strong way. Or slip. For example, if you let the swearing in meetings or shouting in meetings go unchecked, then you'll slip in one direction very fast.
Yeah. Rose makes a great comment about, which is adding to Will's, which is why now as well.
Yeah, and this is a good addition to the design thinking description that Will gave, because why now? In the end, the reality is many companies put out products and services that no one wants or requires, but it was because someone in the team thought that it was a good idea. And you should learn from that, really, and you should speak to the customers.
Yeah.
And I love this from Will, acceptable versus unacceptable behavior. It's really, really important to focus on that, because what's worse? Is it worse that an employee goes into the stationery cupboard and steals a stapler and some pens? Or is it worse that an employee goes into a meeting and shouts at someone, and suddenly the 10 other people in the meeting don't participate and feel that very nervous and have broken the trust? Well, by the letter of the law, the one that steals some stationery from the cupboard would go to jail, but the one that shouts, there would be no consequence. And I think that's probably the wrong way around when it comes to culture.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's it's such a well, I was going to say difficult, but it should be easy because it should be common sense. But as we know, so often in life that there's actually no common sense. But
yeah, and you know what's people they want to hang on to and keep doing. So that's a fair reason, I would say.
Dan, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, The Culture Advantage, available on Amazon worldwide, I'm sure. And remind people where they can find you.
Or Dan Strode on LinkedIn. I will be delighted to continue the conversation. And thanks so much, Tim.
And you're always on LinkedIn. You know, people will be able to get hold of you within a couple of hours or something like that. Certainly the best place that I've found to get hold of you. But no, thank you for coming on and for talking about your book. It's a great book. I really loved it. And you know, if you're looking to build an organization and a culture of innovation, it's a great place to start.
Well, it means a lot coming from you, Tim. So thank you.
Thank you. Dan, thank you so much for coming on today. And thank you for Will, Andrew, Rose, for all the comments. They were excellent. Thank you so much.
See you.